Hey everybody, just wanted to make a quick observation about the new plants I've put in my tank. I recently collected some plants from Prettyboy Reservoir. I collected some Anacharis and I collected some water milfoil. I'm not exactly sure what species it is, so we're just going to refer to it as milfoil. And I was afraid at first that it would not do well in my tank. I thought maybe it wouldn't take to the water conditions or something like that, but it turned out that that is not an issue at all. It's growing very vigorously. You can see all this stuff right here is the milfoil that I'm talking about, and a little bit of this floating stuff here is the Anacharis. And then in this tank I've actually planted some of the Anacharis, and you can see it growing right there. And it's doing really well. And the thing I wanted to note about it is the other thing I was concerned about, and that is the fact that I have a lot of fish that eat plants. And this tank has a gourami in it, and a gourami really makes short work of a lot of different plants. And yet, as tender and soft and feathery as this is, it really is a very, very soft plant. It doesn't seem to have any bite marks, nibbles, chews, nothing. It just seems to be completely left alone. And I'm noticing the same thing with the Anacharis, but the Anacharis is a little stiffer in texture, and I wouldn't think that that would be one of those yummy, sweet, tender plants that fish like gouramis tend to gobble up. So let's kill this light here for a minute to reduce the glare on my gourami tank somewhat. And then we'll have a look over here. And first of all, you can see some of the milfoil that's broken loose from where I tucked it in at the bottom is just growing from a floating position in the tank. And that's what this big feathery looking thing is here. You can see how tightly compacted the internodal spaces are over here where it's getting a lot of light. But if you look over here, where it's actually not getting a lot of light, it was about yay tall when I planted it, and it's only been a couple of weeks now, and you can see how it's already all the way up to the surface. And look at the internodal spaces on this one that got so much less light, and of course you can see now that it's growing up under the light. Look how tight they're getting again. So clear indication that this plant will do okay in low light, but it's definitely a plant that grows and stretches and tries to get towards a higher amount of light, which is normal. Where I find it is usually growing up out of deep water, sometimes shallow water, but usually it comes up out of deep water, and then you don't really even see the green foliage until the last few feet as it gets to the top. The rest of it is basically just a stalk that goes way down to the bottom, and that's where it's rooted in. So I've got two gouramis in this tank. I've got the moonlight you can see right there, and then I've got that little honey gourami you can see right there. And that's what actually got me thinking about this when I walked in the room. I came in and the honey gourami was in here in the roots of my floating water sprite. And if you're familiar with floating water sprite, you will know that that should be just this massive, flowing, beautiful hair-like root structure hanging down into the tank, but it's not. It's all short and cropped and stumpy. I mean, look at that one. Look how short and stumpy that is. That is the root system of a floating water sprite. There's barely anything left of it. And that's because the gouramis get in there and munch it to pieces. They munch my temple plants up. That's why the temple plant, you know, looks like that. What's left of the temple plant looks like that. And I've even got the algae eaters in here that scrape the Anubias to the point where you can see this leaf, it suffered from damage from having, you know, bacterial growth and stuff on it, and then as it got scraped, it's scraped it to the point where you can see the skeleton of the leaf being exposed. And yet, look at this milfoil. It is perfectly intact. There's not so much as a nibble on it. It really isn't. My tank upstairs has the milfoil in it, and it's doing really well in there. Likewise, no damage that I can see, but all that's in that tank is an apisto and some guppies, and I do have a clown pleco in there, but I don't think the clown pleco is not really a plant eater, and none of the other animals in there are plant eaters either, so no sense in really even looking at that tank. But I got two gouramis in this tank, and everything is being left alone. I've got the opaline gourami in my waterfall tank here, as we just saw, and everything, of course, is being left alone. And my native tank is a little bit different, but this whole tank is sort of a little bit different. The nutrient load in this tank and the stocking density and everything is completely different than my other tanks. This tank is loaded up. It also has the silver dollars in there, which are aggressive plant eaters. And it's got the tilapia in there, which is also a fairly aggressive plant eater back there in the corner. And so the Anacharis I planted in here has just been sort of reduced to a stump. I'm not sure if that's from growth on it. You can see how grungy it looks. It's got stuff growing all over it. So that could have something to do with why it's not taking off, or it could have been munched down by that tilapia for all I know. I don't know. We've also got some of the Milfoil here, and this is a little bit more interesting. First of all, we've got a lot of growth and crud and stuff growing on it, and that's why it looks so grungy like this. I actually sort of pulled this out from under here. But this one is the interesting one, because it does have the grunge and growth on it, but if you look through here, it almost looks as if some of that stuff has been nibbled down and reduced by being chewed on, rather than being reduced by sort of dying off and deteriorating, because it doesn't look like it's been deteriorated. It looks like it's been sort of trimmed at angles. So this one might have been chewed on. I'm not 100% sure, but it's also really hard to tell because it's got so much growth and, you know, crud on it from being in this, you know, nutrient-rich tank. This tank's filled with soup, not water. So I don't know. I don't really want to lump this tank in with the other ones. The fact that the gouramis are not eating it, I find interesting. And the interesting thing might simply be that that's not a native plant to where gouramis are used to eating it or something like that. They just haven't figured out that it's food yet. I'm not sure. But the long and short of it is the gouramis do not seem to bother that milfoil, and that's good news for my gourami tank. Eventually I might be able to get that water sprite out of there altogether and just have a bunch of milfoil floating in here, and it might not look the same from outside the tank, but it would serve a great purpose. It would be a good fast-growing plant that would absorb nutrients, and it would give me a lot of superficial cover, which in a tank with, you know, schooling fish and gouramis and stuff, they like to have that overhead cover to make them feel safer and everything. So floating plants are important in a tank like this, and that milfoil might serve better than that water sprite. I don't know. Anyway, I'm going to be out of here for the rest of the afternoon, and I did just kind of make that observation when I walked in the room real quick, and I wanted to grab my camera and talk about that for a few minutes while I was thinking about it. So, thanks for watching that one. Don't forget, this here is my gourami tank. Make sure you subscribe, because you never know what you're going to get with me. Thanks for watching, and I will see you real soon in the next one.